This is a true story from a few years ago, one that still gives me chills whenever I think about it. It was a rainy Saturday afternoon, and I was about 18 years old at the time. I had spent most of my childhood in a small town where everyone knew each other. We had a neighborhood park, some woods, and a small creek that ran behind our house. It was a peaceful, almost too quiet place to live, but nothing ever seemed out of the ordinary until that day. My family had gone to visit some relatives for the weekend, and I stayed behind to take care of the house and the pets. That afternoon I decided to go for a walk. There was something peaceful about walking through the woods in the rain. The air was fresh, and the smell of wet earth was calming. I had walked these woods countless times as a kid, so I knew them well. It had been raining for hours, but I wasn't bothered by it. I slipped into my jacket and boots, grabbed my phone, and started walking toward the woods behind our house. The trees loomed above me, and the ground beneath my feet was soft and slippery. As I walked deeper into the woods, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Maybe it was the sound of the rain tapping on the leaves, or the occasional rustle in the underbrush that made me feel like I wasn't alone. I tried to brush it off as just the usual noises of the forest, but I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that someone or something was following me. I decided to keep walking, telling myself it was just my imagination. I reached a small clearing by the creek, a place I loved to visit when I wanted to clear my head. I sat down on the large rock by the water, looking out at the gentle flow of the creek as the rain splattered on the surface. It was then that I heard it, a twig snapping behind me. I froze, my heart racing. I turned around quickly, but there was nothing there. I called out, "Hello, is someone there?" The only response was the sound of rain hitting the ground. I shook it off and stood up to leave, but as I turned, I noticed something strange. A figure was standing at the edge of the clearing, barely visible through the dense trees. It was tall, impossibly tall, with a hunched posture, and it was standing still, just watching me. The figure didn't move, didn't make a sound. It was like it was waiting for me to make the first move. I called out again, this time more forcefully, "Who's there?" But the figure remained still, just staring. My heart started pounding in my chest, and I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. Something wasn't right. I knew I had to leave, but my legs felt like they were made of lead. I slowly started walking back toward the path, keeping my eyes on the figure, which still hadn't moved. It was like it was stuck in place, frozen in time. The more I looked at it, the more I felt that this wasn't a person, it was something else. I turned and broke into a run, my boots splashing in the muddy ground as I sprinted toward home. My breathing was ragged and my heart felt like it was about to explode. I didn't dare look back, but I could still feel the weight of that figure's gaze on me, following me through the trees. As I approached the edge of the woods, I heard the sound of heavy footsteps behind me. I glanced over my shoulder and saw the figure, now much closer, its long twisted limbs stretching toward me. It was chasing me. I ran faster, my fear overwhelming every other thought. I reached the edge of the woods, bursting through the trees and into my backyard. I didn't stop until I was safely inside the house, slamming the door behind me and locking it. I stood there gasping for breath, my mind racing. What had I just seen? Who or what was that figure? And why was it following me? I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the mind, maybe a shadow or an animal, but deep down I knew that wasn't the case. There was something in those woods, something I couldn't explain. Later that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I kept hearing faint rustling noises outside, like someone was moving around in the yard. But when I looked out the window, there was nothing there. The next day, I decided to go back to the woods. I couldn't let fear control me. I needed answers. But when I reached the clearing, I found something that made my blood run cold. The large rock I had been sitting on the day before was covered in strange markings, symbols that looked ancient, like something from a different time. And in the mud near the creek I saw fresh footprints, large unnatural footprints that weren't there the day before. I quickly left the woods and never went back. To this day I have no idea what I saw that day. I've heard rumors about strange things happening in those woods, but no one talks about it openly. People just avoid it, and that's what I do now. Maybe it was just my imagination, maybe it wasn't. But I'll never forget the feeling of being watched by that thing, whatever it was, and I'll never go back to those woods again.